Hi, I'm Sarah Nearing, and today I will be presenting on the work I have been doing for the ICT practicum, where I have been assisting with content development for a chatbot prototype being created for the University of Kentucky Libraries. The purpose of this chatbot is to provide answers to basic informational and directional questions and to connect users to reliable sources and librarians. The goal of the content of the chatbot is to create a carefully curated knowledge base where all the information that the chatbot has to draw from when generating a response has been verified as correct by librarians. Before I joined the project, the content was gathered by prompting Gemini to create content chunks with no more than 2,500 characters based on information taken from UK libraries' indexed websites. While Gemini was able to create the content chunks, they contained a lot of old information and even hallucinations. The first image on the poster here shows a response that includes incorrect information, which in this case is the cost of printing. It's now a little bit more expensive. My first task after beginning the practicum was to go through all of the content to find terms that could have links added to them and then find the links, so that when an answer is generated, it includes a link to further information on the topic. And you can see in the first image here as well, there are links to the William T. Young Library, Cat Cache, and so on. After this came the bulk of what I worked on, which was trying to verify all of the information in the content chunks. As I mentioned, there was a lot of incorrect information that I needed to identify and correct. I show an example of a hallucination here at the top that I came across. There was some information about a patent trademark resource center as being located at the Science and Engineering Library, and I could not find any mention of this anywhere. And so I just asked Gemini if it was a hallucination, and this shows Gemini's response, which is basically that because of the size of UK, they just kind of assumed that there would be a patent resource center here and just threw that into the information. In order to verify corrections, I had to search through information on the library's web pages and reach out to librarians for confirmation on certain things like which databases the UK still had access to and ones that they recommended. The way that I corrected all of the information in the content chunks was through creating a prompt where I could input all of the information that needed to be changed and have Gemini regenerate the chunk to include the corrected information. I did this just by starting out with a basic prompt that included things like make sure this very specific information is the only thing being changed, used concise, literal language, and don't hallucinate. I also asked the temperature to be set to 0, which I learned through this process that there is a 0 to 6 scale that is used to determine how creative a chatbot can be in generating response. So in order to make sure that Gemini didn't get too creative with its responses to my prompting, I made sure to instruct it to set the temperature to 0. I was able to refine the prompt by continually asking Gemini how I could improve it until I reached the point where I was consistently getting the information changed in the way that I wanted it to be changed without having to make any other changes. So here at the bottom is the final prompt that I used when making corrections for all of the content chunks that needed corrections. However, I learned this past week that when Gemini makes an update, there is a risk that the prompt will no longer work the same way that it did before. When I was working on making the last few corrections, I noticed that instead of replacing information in a sentence, it would just delete the entire sentence. I was so confused as to why this was happening until I decided I'll just ask Gemini and see what it says. And I discovered that the latest update had changed how the prompt instructions were prioritized, and I'm going to actually throw in an extra slide at the end of this presentation to show Gemini's response because I thought that it was kind of interesting. So if you're interested, you can see that at the end of the presentation. I finally finished making all the corrections a couple of days ago, so now I've moved on to the next phase, which is going back through the 300 plus content chunks to find dynamic triggers. This involves information in the content that has the ability to change quickly, such as the printing prices. This is something that could potentially change every year. In this case, certain keywords and phrases will trigger the inclusion of static information about printing prices that will attach to the generated response every time those keywords and phrases are used. This will ensure that the most up-to-date information is included in the responses. The hope is that by putting all of this work into making sure the knowledge base has been verified as correct, that there will be much less risk of incorrect information or hallucinations. After I'm finished with all of this process, then we will have the chatbot used by librarians so they can go through and see if they can find any other things that need to be corrected. And then it will move on to the next phase. And I'm interested to see how the project continues to evolve over time. It's been really interesting to work on this project.